I am here to talk about another cameo for use with Shang Tsung. And today's cameo is Sareena, seemingly everybody's favorite cameo. I'm going to go over all of her moves. I'm going to talk about how they fit into Shang's game plan and what they're used for in general. And I'm going to talk about how good I think she is for Shang. So, we'll dive right in and start by talking about Old Moon, which I think is the simplest move in her list. It is a high projectile. It does 60 damage on hit, and it does 17.5 on block. It comes out quick, and as you can see, it has a very fast recharge. Probably up there with being one of the fastest in the game. Maybe the fastest. And it is -2 on block from point blank range. And it is +14 from full screen. So, it is an okay move in general, but it is not a good move for Shang. So, you might think to yourself, oh, a reasonably fast high projectile. Well, the truth is, that's 23 frames, that's not fast. 18 frames on the straight skull. Now, the straight skull is a little bit less plus. 11 frames here, 14 frames on that. But they're both highs, so if our opponent likes to sit at the end of the screen crouching, then it doesn't change anything. Sareena's projectile is not adding anything to our zoning there. And you might think, oh, it's safe on block, so I could just use it to make myself safe, but no, everybody can crouch it and jab you out. So, for Shang, this move basically has no uses. It is very redundant with the rest of Shang's kit. It's basically a straight skull, but it costs a Kameo meter, even though the cooldown's very fast, and it kind of doesn't matter. Just having another straight skull isn't what we need. We already have 3 straight skull options that are all at least equivalent to this move. So, the other thing it gets used for is bluffing Kia's blades. And these are Kia's blades, her move that everybody loves to throw out. But the truth is that Kia's blades are punishable in the same way as this, so bluffing it doesn't really do much, especially for Shang, who doesn't have some amazing stagger game. Not only that, but Kia's blades only start up a little bit slower than this. Nobody's ever fallen for this. I've seen people try to do it. It only works at range when you're zoning. If you were going to do this, but instead you activate your Kameo and do this, sometimes people respect you a little too much, but you can already triple skull as Shang and force people to respect that, so you don't need to bluff Kia's blades to make people respect your zoning. Your high projectiles. If people are crouching high projectiles, they're always going to crouch for too long against Shang because of his skull game at variable counts. So, the next move in Sareena's list is Demonic Dance. Demonic Dance is her down cameo. It is that. It is a mid-hitting kick that does 17.5 on chip. I think it does 60 on hit. Yes, it does. And it is very, very close range. Look at that. Doesn't reach out at all. That's not its purpose. So, the main application of this move is as an invincible wake-up, but it can be used to make a string safe like that. When it's used in this way, it is okay. It's safe on block, but it has no pushback, so your opponent gets to take their turn and do whatever they want. You're going to get thrown a lot when this happens because it has no pushback at all. Your opponent can throw you from right where they're standing. But if you feel like your defense game point blank is good, then it's an okay way to end strings, but the truth is that Shang is already reasonably good at ending strings safely. You just cut it short there. You can block confirm to cut short right here. You still have plenty of time. This is Yeah, -6, -6. So you're only trying to stop that, -11, and then this move right here is only -6, but it's a high, so if they know it's a high, they'll crouch it. But if they know it's a high, you're going to start doing that, so that they can't just crouch. So adding Sareena into this mix, it just doesn't really give you much of anything. It is not so slow that people can jab out of it. It is really just not impressive on block. It doesn't give us pressure. And what we really want is pressure. So the main application of it is going to be as an invincible wake-up. It's a reasonably good invincible wake-up. But it is not incredible. You've seen better invincible wake-ups from other cameos. So Lou's going to do that. As you can see, it beats a regular meaty, gives us 32 frames of advantage on hit. And in fact, if it hits just in general, it gives 44 frames of advantage if it's not done as an invincible wake-up. Has a little bit of pushback, but it actually kind of puts us at the cursed distance for Shang. He's very close to being out of range of mid-skull and out of range of far skull at the same time. He still gets hit by far skull from here, but if he took a step backwards, he would be in the cursed range. And from here, all we can do, we actually can't even do our forward 3. We're pretty much, we have to zone. We can do ground skulls, we can do regular skulls. This is, in a way, good for us. Almost nobody else can reach us from here either. So it's our turn to just zone. But it's not an incredible knockback. When it's done as an invincible wake-up, it is much riskier, though. Normally it's -3 on block, but when done as an invincible wake-up, it is punishable. Like most invincible wake-ups, but not all. So, -15 on block there. And we barely push our opponent back at all, so this is just full combo punishable by the whole cast. Very, very easy. They can always do their highest damage route. So it's an okay invincible wake-up in the sense that it does beat meaties, and for an invincible wake-up, it's relatively quick at 20 frames. But the truth is that Shang already has armored claws, and those are 13 frames, and they're -17, but they're basically just as punishable. -17 and -15, the difference between those is pretty much nothing. You're getting full combo punished by everyone either way. And claws at least have multiple hits, deal decent chip damage, and if they do hit, our opponent will end up full screen with, and will have tons of frame advantage. Where instead of ending up like a little further than round start with good frame advantage. So it's a little redundant with Shang's kit already. This move also just doesn't really add anything to Shang's game plan. It comes back relatively quickly. So that's a thing to be happy with. It's like probably a slightly faster than average cooldown, but it's still not an amazing move. And, having infinite uses of a move we don't use isn't actually helpful. It's the same problem with Old Moon. So, the next move I'm going to cover is Kia's Blades. I think this is the one that everybody basically comes to Sareena for, her back cameo. We have these knives come out, and then they come back. You can see it does alright chip damage, did about 40 chip damage there. In fact, it did exactly 40 chip damage. If your opponent blocks the whole thing. And keeps them stunned up for a long time. If they block it, you get quite a bit of time where they are in stun and you can move around. And if they get hit by it, you can get full combos. So it is usually used as a combo extender by most of the cast. We would do something like this. For our standard B&B. And Sareena makes it deal more damage. So a route that would normally be dealing 388 damage is instead dealing, what, 439, so almost 44%. And if we did it twice in one combo, we can, because our opponent stays grounded, so we get to choose whatever combos, routes we like. We don't have to restrict ourselves to things that work within the juggle. So if we do it twice, we get up to 47%. That's kind of cool. The high damage and high hit stun from this does not translate into a form stealer combo the way you might imagine it would. As you can see, we didn't quite make our combo there. But it's actually not possible for us to form steal during this animation and then hit our opponent. The spacing is just wrong, and the amount of hit stun we get isn't enough. So, it can make combos, it makes higher damage combos, but the truth is Shang already has pretty good damage. Our standard B&B is doing 388 if we do it the easy way, and it's doing 393, I think, if we do it the hard way. So, we're really just not picking a Kameo to get combo damage. And that's really all this move is offering us, because these projectiles are also high. They do go full screen, just like Old Moon does. Yeah, 388 there for our normal. But like our skulls and like Old Moon, they are highs. Our opponent can just crouch them. An opponent crouching them can kind of get got by Ground Skull. So it's not the worst thing ever to toss these out. They have her slower cooldown, and they are really, really bad on block. If our opponent blocks this move and then decides that they want to just jab us a few times, we are just going to get jabbed a few times. So, on block, it's not safe at all. People can actually jab out before the knives come out in the first place because of the 26 frame startup. So, you can get full combo punished if they realize that Sareena is coming, and they have a long time to react. 26 frames is plenty of time for somebody to realize that you called a Kameo and just start punching. If you called Old Moon instead, they'll get hit by Old Moon for not a ton of damage, and they might trade with you, depending on the string that you did it out of. And if you call Kia's Blades, they'll full combo punish you, and then if they don't risk it, then they will still get to punish you with a jab and have you at a frame disadvantage once the blades are gone. It is true, however, that if your opponent just if your opponent hits Sareena during the animation while the knives are out, the knives do still come back, so they can't just get up and full combo punish you after blocking the first 2 hits from the knives. They have to just take a jab or a poke to get frame advantage, and then wait for the knives to pass, and by then you'll be able to block, and it'll be their turn. The problem there is that it's very easy to throw you there, or just do any kind of mix-up. So, expect to eat dirt a lot for throwing this move out on block. You should never throw it out on block. You should hit confirm into it if you're going to use it, but the truth is that spending Kameo to get slightly better damage out of Shang Tsung is not usually something we do. And another problem with it is just that it does high damage, but we can actually get like the same and maybe even more damage out of Sector. So it's not like we're picking her because she's the only Kameo that can yield us damage. We have a much better Kameo option that can yield us similar or better damage. So the other thing that it's decent for as a zoning tool, it does sort of force crouches, and if your opponent does not crouch it, we can ground skull them. So if they get caught at any range, Shang can always ground skull, which means that we get a full combo at all distances. Some people are only getting, like, Johnny's only getting shadow kicks at full screen, and Sub-Zero's only getting slides and stuff like that, but Shang is getting ground skull loops. So we are getting more out of using it as a zoning tool than most people do. Yeah, we can continue the combo there for sure. Sometimes it's a little wonky about whether or not Far Skull will combo into Mid Skull or combo into another Far Skull. Usually it combos into Mid Skull, but every once in a while you'll run into a scenario where for some reason or another it combos with a Far Skull, and then it might mess up your rhythm. The end result is that this is an okay zoning tool, but again, we have straight skulls, and this just kind of forces our opponent to crouch for a long time while they're hanging out at the other side of the screen. And we already do that by having variable numbers of our skulls. And then we can switch into ground skull and try to get combos from it. So we're not actually enforcing our straight skulls here, which is what we would hope for from a Kameo, is like a mid projectile or some kind of full screen mid hitting move that can make people actually respect our straight skulls and block them. If they're blocking our straight skulls at full screen, we're happy. They're going to take chip damage, and we're going to have frame advantage to do it again, or to go into ground skulls when they try to move. So this just doesn't get us that. They can crouch it all, and then they can dash forward, and then they can crouch some more. So that is Kia's Blades for Shang. I think it's basically another redundant move. Now, the move that Sareena offers us that is not redundant is Jataka's Curse, her neutral cameo. As you can see, this is an ambush. I can move around and do whatever I want while she's doing this. Come in. And I can do this while Shang is doing some other move. We can go like this. And as you can see, we drain their meter. That is what the move does. Sareena comes out. She drains your opponent's meter. And it is not showing us that. We're on default there. Now, as you can see, we're stealing the meter from Liu Kang. It doesn't go to us. It just leaves him. And she steals a full bar before she leaves if they're standing in the circle the whole time. Now, wherever you call Sareena, she comes out based on Shang Tsung's location, not your opponent's. So she doesn't always come out close to your opponent. But the square is always under your opponent. And the square does not move with your opponent. It just comes out wherever they were when she deployed it and stays there. But because Shang Tsung keeps you in the same spot for most of his combo, as you can see, we can basically cash out on that. We just ended that combo with Liu Kang having no bar. Now, that is interesting because when she is draining meter, your opponent is also not able to gain meter. So you can see that Liu Kang has 1 bar right now. We're going to do our B&B to him. Okay, he gained a full bar from the B&B. So, we're going to do the B&B now, but with Jataka's Curse running. If I can manage it. So, as you can see, he's left with about half a bar, a little more than half a bar. And I didn't actually deploy Sareena at the perfect time, even. Now, right here, the whole time, he is getting juggled by us. He is in the curse, so he takes the maximum amount of curse. By the end of the combo, he has a little bit more than half a bar. Now, this means that we basically stole a bar and a half from him. We stole the first bar that he started with, plus we stole half of the bar he would have gained by getting hit by us. So, this is very net positive for Shang's resources. When we do this, we are going to really make it so our opponent is in the red as far as resources go. Now, we can't take their Kameo bar from them, but we can take their meter. And our Kameo bar is going to come back relatively quickly, and their meter will not. Meter is a much more valuable resource than Kameo. And that's all there is to it. If we could trade one Kameo meter for 1.5 bars of our opponent's meter, we would do it every single time. And we can now. So every time we get a hit, we call Sareena to do this. The other upshot of this is that when Sareena does this, she starts draining our opponent's meter, which means our opponent cannot break because they don't have 3 full bars. So our combos are now unbreakable, and they eat about 1.5 bars of our opponent's meter. Now, this is very good, but it has a couple of issues. First being, you don't want to start it until the combo is started. Like, you don't just want to call this and then hope that your combo lands. You can do it when people are blocking and stuff like that, but it is not exactly a surefire strategy on blockers. They can end up knocking Sareena out. And you can end up knocking them out of their range for the meter burn. So, Shang also just doesn't have a great way to hold these people in place long enough for this to always work and to not get punished. Sometimes it makes people freak out when they realize that they're losing their meter. They see themselves inside the circle and they freak out and try to do something they shouldn't. But normally, like, that's all we can really do to try to hold you in it, and then you can do what it's your turn, and you're probably going to hit Sareena. So I wouldn't recommend doing it on block. One weird application of it just for Shang is that it's pretty good at full screen. You can do this, and just, like, even if they're crouching, they're still losing all the meter, so it encourages them to do something stupid while we sit here and fire straight skulls at them. And because they're sitting there crouching, trying to avoid the straight skulls, we're just going to do it again as soon as Sareena's finished and eat all their meter. And they're not going to gain meter for sitting there blocking our straight skulls. And we're going to gain a bunch of meter because we're firing special moves, and firing specials gains meter. So, you know, if we're here doing this, you know, we're going to end up, you know, we're positive a whole bar there. And if we hit, we might be positive more than that. And they've lost all their meter. So, that is a powerful way to get your opponents to respect your zoning a little bit more, is that they don't have any bar when they crouch your projectiles. And when you're doing this, you never want to fire ground skulls, because ground skulls are very negative on block, which means your opponent just gets to dash out after they block a ground skull. But if you're firing straight skulls, your opponent dashes and then has to worry about more straight skulls coming. And you're not crazy negative off of this move. You are negative if they crouched it. If they blocked it, you're positive and just keep firing, man. But odds are good that they're going to crouch it. They're going to lose a bunch of meter while they're crouching. And then they're going to try to dash up, and you're going to fire some more. If they get hit by that, it's going to knock them back into the meter drain, and they're going to have to do it all over again. So it's a good way to make people get careless. Um, because of Shang holding people in the same spot, you can always fully cash out on this when you hit. Like if you get a hit, just do this while you're doing your combo. It will drain as much meter as it possibly can every time. It's very good for that. Now, your opponents will realize that you're doing this after a couple of times, and then they're just gonna call breaker as soon as like the second hit connects with them. They're gonna call breaker as soon as they possibly can, because they know if they don't, they're just gonna lose the bar instead of spending it. So spend it, or use it, or lose it. They're always gonna use it if they have a brain. So prepare to have every single combo broken as soon as possible with this scheme. Another reason that it's a little bit quirky with Shang, though, and a little bit redundant with Shang, frankly, is because Shang can already do weird, unbreakable stuff. So Ground Skull, for those who don't know, is unbreakable. When you get hit by his skulls, you cannot break the combo. So when I do this, there was no opportunity for him to break. We do this. He can only break our normal combo when we do the kicks right here. The kicks and the knees, he's able to break those. He's able to break the injection, but he's not actually able to break the skulls. So we can alter our combo to sort of be more difficult to break. We can just go like this and keep juggling him with ground skulls if we're worried about it. So now this technique usually costs meter, and I'm not very good at it because it doesn't have a ton of applications. I don't use it very often. But it is possible to do that and keep going. You can keep going from there. You can get up to a reasonably high damage doing that. So you can already get good unbreakable damage as Shang, at least once you've connected this, but this is the part they will break anyway, is somewhere in these first 3 hits, or first 4 hits before you're calling Sareena. So you have to call her really early if you don't want to see your combos broken every time. And calling her really early sometimes means that you walk your opponent out of the curse, and you don't want to do that either. So you're trying to find this sweet spot where your opponent hasn't realized they need to break yet, and the curse was still going to connect for the full amount of time. And if you really wanted an unbreakable combo, you had one anyway. It doesn't give you resource advantage in the way that Jataka's curse does, but it is unbreakable. So in some scenarios, this move can also be used to bluff her blades. So if your opponent is on the lookout for Sareena calls, like they're looking out for this move, right? But instead you do this one, and then start firing straight skulls, right? Sometimes you're going to have your opponent just sitting there crouching, expecting Sareena blades. Another way that it's useful is that you could do something like this, right? And your opponent thought blades were coming and went to respect it. So you can kind of use it as part of a stagger. You can go like that. Right? And your opponent is more likely to respect your stagger because they thought one of your Kameo moves was coming. Unfortunately, all of your Kameo moves are crouchable and jabbable, so like right there, you might have a good move because they thought a Kameo was coming and it was time for them to crouch jab. So they went to crouch jab and got hit. So, like if you're doing this, your opponent might get hit more often than if you were, you know, trying to call her in at the end of the string. And you can use it as part of a weird stagger game, so it'll probably juke people a couple of times, but it's not like a foolproof strategy. So those are all of her moves, and that brings me to my overall thoughts about Sareena. I think you can probably tell from the way I've talked about it that I think Sareena's a weak pick for Shang. Every move she has is redundant in some way, and most of them are just incredibly redundant. Old Moon is just it just sucks. The move doesn't do anything for Shang. It's worse in every way than, I mean, not in every way, but it is just worse than shooting a straight skull almost every time because it takes longer and is effectively the same thing. And it doesn't have it. Normally, it has the mind game between that version and that version, right? But Shang already has that mind game, so your opponent's already concerned with crouching all those things, and you're really unlikely to get stray hits off that mind game the way that you might with someone else. Kia's Blades, again, it's a lot like firing Triple Skull. Like, sure, you get combos off of it when it connects, but there are other cameos that can give us combos off of straight skulls when they connect, and are much better for us in general. And this one is just not adding much to our zoning kit. It doesn't enforce the projectiles that we already have. Her Kia's Blades add combo damage, but we already have combo damage, and we can get just as much or more from Sector. So, like, we could play a better Kameo and get better damage from our combos, so why are we doing it with Sareena? She has a good wake up, but we already have a good wake up. Spinning Spikes is a pretty good armored move. And other cameos also have invincible wake ups, so there's really like lots of options if we want to do that. And we don't need to restrict ourselves to Sareena. Her projectiles all get ducked, they don't enforce our zoning. Curse is a cool move. It's interesting. Having a way to gain resource advantage very reliably is an interesting way to play the game, but I think when you pick Sareena, you're embracing that that's all you're getting. You're getting resource advantage curse move, and everything else in her kit is trash. The one thing that Sareena's curse did that I forgot to mention is that it can help you with crushing projectiles a little bit. It doesn't exactly fix the issue, but if you did this, your opponent's going to fire a crushing projectile. Oh, he doesn't have meter. That's what the problem is. Your opponent's going to fire a crushing projectile, and you're going to call Sareena, and you see it's still going to crush the projectile, but Sareena's going to take the hit. So it won't be a terrible trade for you, where it normally is just atrocious if you do this. You're taking 120, getting knocked down, your opponent's going to move up, it's really, really bad. You do this instead, you get to hide behind her, you're not gonna trade well. If you see it coming, you can because of the ground skulls. So you could be like, well, we're over here, we're gonna fire straight skull, we think you're gonna... And then now we can full combo you and get a very favorable trade off of your crushing projectile. So it can be used that way, it's a little bit janky. However, it does kind of come naturally because you're going to use curse while people are sitting at full screen and you're zoning them. So it makes sense that you're already going to have this set up when your opponent tries to fire a crushing projectile, and then you just profit whenever they do that. Of course, if they have something like Sub-Zero armor, almost all of her moves are projectiles, and they just get beaten by projectile immune moves like Jade Glow, Sub-Zero armor, Motaro Reflect, all that happy stuff. So, Viltrumite Stance. So you're not getting a way to beat projectile immunity, but you do get a way to trade favorably with crushing projectiles. Your opponent will probably figure out what's going on after they do it once or twice and stop firing the crushing projectiles, but that's a win for you too. So, and in fact, when they do fire a crushing projectile, they lost a bunch of meter to the meter drain. They fired a bar of meter for the crushing projectile, and they got full comboed by you. So it's a really, really bad deal. And if they don't fire the crushing projectile, they still lose the meter and don't have the option anymore. And it can just rob them of the option. If they only have one bar when you start, then they just no longer have the option to fire back crushing projectiles. And it can deny people armored wake-ups because you're eating so much bar. Now, denying somebody an armored wake-up is good, but it is better if you have a lot of block pressure, because they're using armored wake-ups to escape block pressure. And Shang doesn't have block pressure unless he picks a different Kameo. So picking Sareena actually gets rid of the reason that you need to stop them from armoring, while simultaneously getting rid of their ability to armor. So for other characters, this move is even better, where you're like, yeah, you can't armor and you have to hold all my block pressure. Now it's just you can't armor, even though you probably weren't going to, because I don't have any block pressure. And that's another problem with her, is just no pressure up close. She also doesn't give us any Form Stealer routes, which is pretty unusual. Almost every Kameo provides a Form Stealer route. Sareena is one of the few who does not. And there's just not very many upsides to the team, and the way you have to think about it isn't, are Sareena's moves good? The way you have to think about it is, are Sareena's moves better than another Kameo? Because that's what she's replacing, another Kameo. So if there's another Kameo who is doing things that are better than her, you need to understand that you've denied yourself access to those things in order to play her moves, which they all function, but none of them are adding much to what Shang can do. So, thank you for watching. That's the end of the video. If you'd give me a like, a comment, a subscribe, you could come and join my Discord server, get some games in. And if you head out to my Twitch to see me play this game live and other fighting games whenever I get some time. I've also been playing in Rip's Arena and a couple of other competitive tournaments. So if you'd like to see, well, other people's high-level gameplay and my gameplay against high-level gameplay, then come hang out. I'll see you in the next one.